morning, good afternoon, and a very good evening to you, the good people of the tube. Hope you're well today, hope you're feeling grand, and all is well in your world. Today's vid, everybody, is entitled, Do I Hate Valve Amplifiers? And I'm doing a video on this simply because a lot of people get it in their head, because I use solid state amps pretty much exclusively, like 99% of the time I use a solid state amp, be it, my Orange, my Marshalls, or my Boss Katana, or whatever. People seem to think that I hate valve amplifiers and then don't understand why. And simple answer to that is, do I hate valve amplifiers? No, I don't. I love valve amplifiers. I absolutely adore them. But I wouldn't pick one over my Boss Katana or my Marshalls or my Orange or my Fender Deluxe Tone Master or my Vox Escort or the Sub-Zero or the Audition I can see behind the camera. I wouldn't pick it over them. And it comes down to simply a matter of preference. Personal preference. We're all different, we all like different things. And I still stand by what I said in a video I did years ago of why I use solid state amps. I did a video ages ago, and I said in that video that I don't hear the difference between the two. And I still stand by that. I don't hear the difference between the two. I've played through not a million, but I played through so many valve amplifiers and so many solid states, and I just don't feel the difference. I don't hear the difference. I still don't. And it's not because, a lot of people, over the years, a lot of people have commented on my videos saying, well, if you can't hear the difference, maybe you shouldn't even be playing the guitar. Like that's got anything to do with it. Just because my preference is towards solid state, people think I shouldn't be allowed to play the guitar. That says more about them than it does me, definitely. But anyway, we're not here to talk about the trolls. But saying that, you're liking solid state amps as much as I do, and using them as much as I do has landed me in a lot of trouble over the years with people, bands, and everything. I've actually been kicked out of bands because I like solid state amps. Makes sense, doesn't it? And also I've got into kind of rows with people. Well, they've got into rows with me because they're adamant that I should be using a valve amplifier and solid state amp is crap and this and the other, and they want to force their opinion on me and make me change my entire backline to valve amplifiers, which is just not going to happen because I don't bend that easy and I know what I like and I like these. You know what I mean? And again, it's not up to anybody to tell you what you're doing is right or wrong. It's up to you. If it feels right to you, then it's right. If somebody says, well, I wouldn't do it that way, tough. This isn't yours. It's like when people say, well, I wouldn't have done that to my, if I relic a guitar or something, somebody says, I wouldn't have reliced my guitar. Well, good job it's not your guitar then. And if somebody says I wouldn't use a solid state amp over a valve amplifier, that's fine, that's your preference. It's not mine, so don't try and force your opinion on me. I don't try and force solid state on you, don't do it the way around. Never do that. I don't like people who do that. And I don't appreciate being kind of told, basically, by people who think that I'm wrong. I'm not wrong, You're wrong for trying to force it on me, definitely. Because you just don't do that to people. You don't force opinions on people and try and hammer it home until they fold and go, okay, yes, you're right. Because then you're just bullying. In which case, no, in my opinion. Anyway, but like I say, the long and short of it, do I hate valve amplifiers? No, I don't. I just wouldn't pick them over solid state. And the number one reason, the biggest reason of all time, and the reason why I don't like use valve amplifiers over solid state, is consistency of sound. I am a very obsessive person about my sound. I like my amps to sound a certain way every time I plug into them. I don't like variation in tone. I just don't like it. It really bothers me, and it really... I actually need to explore a bit ago. But it really annoys me. I don't like it. And I've had the two main valve amps technically the one main valve amp I've used for the longest time was a Marshall 1987X 50 watt reissue Plexi. And I loved that amp. It's gone. I don't need it anymore. And the reason I don't need it is because I didn't want it. Is because from day to day, that amp would sound totally different. Depending on the power source at the venue or pub I was playing at, that amp would sound totally different. And there was some times when it just didn't want to behave. And it drove me to despair. At some gigs, I was just like, I can't deal with this. Some gigs, actually, I switched back to my Marshall MG, which was always my backup. I always had my MG there as a backup just in case. But it used to drive me spare. It used to drive me absolutely bonkers, and that is my one reason for not using valve amplifiers. That doesn't make me hate them. I just don't like that aspect. You know what I mean? It's not something that appeals to me. I still love that thing on valve amplifiers, but not really. It's not really for me. I know that it really bothers me, and that's why I love Solid State. Is because the sound I have on the Boss Katana or the MG or the CL120 or the Deluxe Reverb or whatever, any of the other Solid State amps I've got or digital amps I've got, I know for a fact of when I turn that thing on one day, it'll sound the same the next day and the next day and the next day and the next day, and I never have to worry about it. The settings I have on my oldest amplifier that I used for the longest time, my first ever Marshall MG, it's not my oldest amp, but it's the one I've used most. They're still the same. I haven't changed the settings on that amp since 2005, and it never sounds any different. From day to day, it never sounds any different, and that's what I want. You know, I don't like to change. I don't like when sound changes. I don't like having to dial in amplifiers. I don't like doing that. I like to just be able to turn the amp on and play, and I don't want to have to think about the sound. I want the sound to be right and where I left it, if that makes sense. And that's what used to bother me about valve amplifiers, is every time I plug into it, it would variate. And a lot of people like that. I mean, I know loads of people who love that, and that's cool. If you like that, that's wicked. I don't. It really bothers me. Now, does that turn me off owning a valve amplifier? No, not in the slightest. I recently, and I'll talk about this a bit more in a future video, but I recently bought my valve amp that I will just have for the rest of my life, and in all fairness, it's the only one I want. So I'll talk about that more though in the future. Well, in about a week or so. I don't have it with me at this point. I'm about to loan it to a friend because his amp died, and so I had to loan it. So anyway, we'll talk about that a bit more in a couple of weeks. But no, I do love that, but it drives me spare most of the time. Like, you know, if I was recording, it would drive me mental. If I was doing live, the variation would drive me mental, and it did drive me mental. There was many times I got drove to literally wanting to just like kick the amp off the cabinet because it just was inconsistent. You know what I mean? Especially the venues I get to play, like pubs. Well, I used to get to play. Their power is it's dirty power. It's not clean. So the amp's never getting a consistent thing. Solid state amps don't give a monkeys about what power they get. As long as they turn on, they're just like, yep, let's go. Valve amps are like, it's a bit too much power. Or it's a bit too much low power. I can't quite function in the right place. And every valve amp has their different voltage where they perform best. You know what I mean? So... And that used to drive me mental. I used to hate that. There was a couple of gigs where my Marshall Plexi just sounded like garbage. No matter what I did, it just sounded like garbage. And it affected my playing, which is another thing. I don't like it when... If something doesn't sound the way I want it to sound, it affects how I play. And because I'm distracted, I'm not able to get lost in it because it's not the sound I want or I can get lost in. So I get distracted by that. And as a result of that, I don't play very well. And I can't get lost in it. You know, I am one of those people who likes to set it and forget it. You know, I mean, it's the same with my pedals, it's the same with my amps and my guitars. Once they're a certain way, I don't want to have to mess with it. You know what I mean? Once the action's set on the guitar, I don't want to have to mess with it until I have to. Intonation, don't want to have to mess with it until I have to. Truss rod, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Same with pedals. If a pedal's set the way I like it to sound, that's the way I want it to sound. I don't want it to change. And, you know, that's why I always have one setting. Like my Marshall Governor has been the same way, has been set the same way since I started using that in like 2007. I haven't changed the setting on the Governor since 2007. All my other Governors I've got, they're all set the same. They all sound the same. You know, stuff like the DS2, I've always ran that thing at flat out. I've always loved running it flat out. I mean, I used to combine it with the Governor because I didn't understand the John Frusciante Dirty Clean thing, but that's another story. But, like I say, I mean, just like coming back a bit, it's all about consistency of sound for me. That's what it boils down to at the end of the day. It's not because I hate valve amplifiers. I don't like their inconsistency. That's simply it. And like I say, you know, does that turn me off from wanting to own one? No, but I now own the only one I actually want. I've got no interest in buying another. I literally have no interest. You know what I mean? Funny enough, actually, yeah. Most of because I have a few at this point in time, but they'll be gone soon. I'm getting rid of them all, apart from this one. I'm keeping this one. And I say I'll talk about that more, but the rest are going to go because I just don't need them. And I just don't play through them. You know what I mean? Because I'm immediately drawn to my Katana or my MGs or my CR120 or whatever. You know, I'm not drawn to having to wait for it to warm up and then dial it in and then for it to change rapidly if it does. You know, sometimes it doesn't. Yeah, granted. But sometimes they do, and sometimes it doesn't sound right. And I've had conversations with people who are Valve amp users, and they will say that one day the amp will sound amazing, the next day it won't sound as good as it did the day before, or this, that, and the other. Or I know some people who record with them, and they'll go into record and the amp won't behave that day, so they can't record. I hate that idea. And I experienced that with my Marshall MG, my Marshall Plexi. I experienced that with my Marshall Plexi. There was a couple of times I wanted to record with it, and it just didn't sound right. And as a result, that moment passed, and that song passed. Whereas with my solid states, if I go, I've got this song idea, I can immediately go upstairs, turn everything on, and record it, and I know it'll sound exactly how I want it to sound. So, like I say, it just boils down to consistency. For me, it's not about me hating Valve amplifiers or thinking they're rubbish or this, that, and the other, because they're not rubbish. My favourite amps come from Valve amp technology. You know what I mean? That's the thing. You know, all guitar amps come from Valve technology, but I just prefer the consistency and thingy of solid state, because tonally, thing like that, I don't feel any difference between the two. A good amp's a good amp, whether it be solid state or Valve. To me, it's a good amp is a good amp. You know what I mean? I'm not saying every solid state amp is great, because it's not. I'm not saying every Valve amp is great, because they're not. I've played through some really garbage solid state amps. I've played through some really garbage Valve amps though as well. You know, so it's just, you just got to take each other in its merit. But one thing I have found with Valve amplifiers is an inconsistency of tone, and I don't like that. Like I say, that is my pet peeve number one, and the reason why I don't use Valve amplifiers. I use Valve amps rarely. You know, I'm a predominantly solid state guy. I don't really like inconsistency of sound. Like I said, I want to be able to go turn on and plug in and go, there it is, and I don't have to think about it. I hate tone searching in an amp when it keeps changing. You know, I mean, I know the sound I want, and as soon as I get it, I don't want to have to mess with it again. So, and I think that's a really good thing as well. I mean, I really feel that's important for me, anyways, is to always know this. I mean, I've known what sound I wanted since I first started playing guitar. In the first 2 years of playing guitar, watching John Frusciante, I knew I was like, that's the sound I want. I want a really nice, rich, warm but aggressive John tone. Not only in the dirty, clean thing, but in the solo tone, the Californication kind of violin tone he's got. And that was it. And it's never changed, and it's still that way now. So when I go for a sound, I know exactly what I want out of an amp. But again, you know, again, consistency. I like it to sound that way every time. I don't like inconsistency. And it's funny, actually, because if you watch some of the Red Hot Chili Peppers gigs in 1999, John in general, you know, anybody using a Valve amplifier, their tone always slightly changes, and that's cool. I mean, I know, like I say, I know a lot of people who really like that, because sometimes at gigs, you know, there's a couple of gigs where John's amp is really quite bright and quite nasty. It's kind of got some teeth to it, and then there's other times where it's kind of dark, and then there's sometimes it's really good and perfect. You know what I mean? Really kind of, it's got the bright, it's got the highs, it's got the lows, it's got the mids, it's got everything. But sometimes it's not quite right. And funnily enough, you can see John sometimes look at his amps and say, something's not right. And he has to go back and mess with them. Funnily enough, before I was filming this video, I was watching him do Scar Tissue in Stockholm in 99. And the song starts and it sounds like John's guitar's underwater. It's a really dark guitar tone he's got. And during the first verse, you see John walk back and he walks up to his Marshall Major and he's looking at it. And he must mess with something, because immediately after that, the sound becomes a lot brighter. Which means at that gig, you're hearing more of the Major than you are the Jubilee, which you can definitely hear. It's got that more kind of clanky clean that the Major's got over the more distorted Jubilee. Anyway, sorry about my phone, everybody. But yeah, like I say, long and short of it is, do I hate valve amps? No, I just don't like their inconsistency of tone. It drives me spare. Whereas solid state, I don't have that worry. It's the one thing I've always loved and will always love about solid state, and it's what pulls me to them more than Valve. It's just like I can turn them off on one day, knowing that the next day it'll sound exactly the same, and that for me is everything. I'm not a big tweaker of amps. I don't like doing that. I have certain settings I go to that I found over the years. I'll have 1 or 2 or 3 on each amp. On the Katana, I have I think I've got 4 sounds that I go to immediately. On the MG, I've got about 1, 2, 4 on the MG, and I think I've got about 4 probably on the CR120 and a couple of other amps I've got. On stuff like the Fender Deluxe Reverb, the Tone Master over there, I've got 1, which is just basically it dimed with basically volume all the way up on 10 with the bass and the treble at 3, reverb at 3 or 4 depending on how I feel, and that's it. You know what I mean? And same with a couple of other amps I've got. I've got 1 setting that just does what I want it to do, and I don't stray from that because that's the sound I want. I really like the Teisco Audition amp that's sat behind you, people with a tube. It's over there, the little Audition amp I did my album 5 with. It's a head and cab. I've done a video on it. I like the setting on that. Everything on 10. It's great. Love it. Just everything on 10. Never changes. That'll do. And it sounds... I love it. It sounds amazing. Every time I just plug into it, it sounds the same. Again, and that just really appeals to me. I don't like variation in tone. I know some people who do, and that's cool if that's what you do. But now I'm going to talk about a bit of the negative side of this. So because I do that, I, over the years, like I say, have received a lot of flack for this. A lot of people saying that if I can't hear the difference, I shouldn't be playing the guitar. I have no right to be playing the guitar if I can't hear the difference between solid state, which is crap, and valve amps, which are good. Which is just not the case. You know what I mean? There is bad valve amps as well. There's really bad solid state. Yes, there is. But there is really, really good solid state as well. It's personal preference. But it's not up to people to decide what I should be using. It's up for me to decide. And the same goes for you people with a tube. It's not up to other people to decide what you should be using, what guitar you should buy, what pedals you should buy, what leads, what amp, should it be valve, should it be solid state? It's up to you. If you want to use solid state, use solid state. If you want to use Axe-Fx, use Axe-Fx. If you want to use a valve amp, use a valve amp. You know what I mean? It's up to you. But don't start trying to push your opinions onto other people. If somebody asks your opinion, tell them your opinion. If they don't like it, that's their problem. Don't make it yours. You know what I mean? Because if I had made, for instance, way back when I was getting kind of threatened to be thrown out of a band because I was using a solid state amplifier over a valve amplifier, if I hadn't stuck by my guns, I would have gone and I would have bought a valve amp, Marshall valve amp it was going to be, and it would have been a mistake, and it could have really got to me. It could have really upset me. It could have done a lot of bad things to me if I had actually given in to this person who was pushing me and pressuring me into using valve amplifier instead of a solid state where I was happy and comfy. So you have to have that inner strength to go, no, this is what I like. And again, knowing what you want and knowing what you like is key to that. Like I say, I am like an absolute creature of habit. I like consistency of sound. I don't like things to be messed with. I think that's my autistic side. But I don't like things to be messed with. I like things to be the way they are all the time. I don't like, if something changes, I don't like it. And I can immediately notice it as well. Like if my amp was slightly altered, I would immediately hear it and I don't like it and it has to go back. To how I know it is. And that was the thing that used to get me about, like I say, using valve amps, was especially gigging them. Was as soon as I turn it on, it would sound great maybe in sound check, and as the gig wore on, the amp would get more tired maybe, or it'd get more power and it'd get more lively. And that inconsistency of tone drove me mad, and I found myself tweaking the amplifier a lot during the gig. And I hate doing that. I'm one of those people who just I turn the amp on. Once the amp's on, I don't want to have to keep going back to it to mess with it. It is what it is, And so I don't do that. So, and another fail-safe I have, people with a tube, is I use my pedals to get my sound. I don't necessarily use the amp to get my sound. The amp is there purely for power more than anything, 90% of the time. Well, not 90% of the time, I'd probably 80% of the time. Because I do like plugging into my amps straight sometimes and just kind of using them for tone. But it was a lesson I learnt a long time ago, and it was really cool because I found out Steve Vai does the same thing, and I was like, something in common with Steve Vai. It's always good. I like because pedals are consistent as well, because they're solid state technology. You know, they don't have valves. They're not inconsistent unless you're running them on batteries. When batteries start to die, they get inconsistent. And again, I hate running pedals on batteries. It drives me insane. I don't mind running a wah pedal on battery because it basically draws no power. Sorry, bit of tangent. When I was gigging with Duke Deludo, I used my Vox wah pedal on a battery because I knew the battery would probably never die. And funny enough, I've still got that battery. It's just sat over there, actually. And that battery lasted for 2 years. Fair enough, it's not used every day, so it was definitely going to last that long. But it still isn't dead. I still have that same battery because wah pedals draw no power from a battery whatsoever, which is great. So I don't mind doing that, and it doesn't bother me at all. But distortion pedals, chorus pedals, anything like that, I hate running on batteries. I can, when the battery starts to die, I can hear it and I don't like it. It feels weird. It really don't like it. Anyway, but yeah, so I get all my sound from my pedals because then I know that, like, if I get a gig, please, and backline is supplied, it's a venue where you have to turn up. There's a backline there. You can't bring your own amps. You've got to use what's there. I know for a fact that I can get my sound because it comes from here, not from that. You know what I mean? And that is something I discovered a long time ago. I remember going to gigs where backline was supplied, and I would plug my guitar into it and my pedals I was using, but I was relying on the amp as well. And I was like, I can't do it because the amp didn't respond the way I wanted it to respond. I do apologise, people of the tube. But it wouldn't respond the way I wanted it to respond because it was a different style of amp to what I was used to. So I eventually got to a point about 2.5 years into playing guitar where I was like, I'm just going to use my pedals to get my sound. I'm going to use the Zoom as my brain to control everything, and everything else is going to run through that, and then it's going to go to the amp. And then in theory, I didn't realise at the time it worked that way. Then in theory, the idea was no matter what amp I plug into, it'll work no matter what. And lucky enough that did work, and I'm really happy about that because now I have no fear about. I don't care what amp I plug into live, as long as I got my pedal board. I don't care. You know what I mean? If I don't have my pedal board, then I still kind of don't care, just because I've played through so many amps in my time. I know what I want and I know how to get it, which is mainly EQ all the way off. So, but either way, I like to get my sound from pedals because, again, consistency of sound. I know my governor, when I turn it on, will sound that way. I know when I turn my jackhammer on, it'll sound that way. When I turn the DS2 on, it'll sound that way, and so on and so forth. And again, just consistency of sound. And again, the solid state amps, they just serve to back that up even more. It's totally kind of pretty much, 99% fail safe of your sound is never going to change. And to me, that's everything. That is absolutely everything. I cannot stand the idea of my sound altering throughout a recording session, a live gig, or just practicing, jamming, or whatever. It drives me spare. It drives me really mad. And again, because because I like things to be consistent, you know what I mean? And again, that probably does have something to do with something, but but I do like that. So that's it. That is my reasons. Like I said, I still don't feel or hear the difference between the two. I just don't. A lot of people that's driven people crazy by the sounds of it. Judging by the comments I've had on my other video where I spoke about that a couple of years ago, people don't understand how or why I can't hear the difference or feel the difference. It's because I don't. I never have. I've played through so many solid state and valve amplifiers that a good amp's a good amp. It's like a good guitar is a good guitar. It doesn't matter what's written on the headstock. It's about whether it's any good or not. You know what I mean? It's like, you've just got to take everything on its merit. is it good or is it bad? Does it work for you or doesn't it? You know what I mean? And like I say, I mean, I can always get my sound out of a valve amplifier, but I can't always make it consistent, which again drives me mad. So that's the reason why, again, solid state rules for me, and I love it, and I just don't feel the need to change. I don't want it. Like I said, I've got my valve amplifier now that I need. I've got no desire to own another. So and again, it's a valve amp I've always wanted to do, and we'll talk about that soon. Anyway, but yeah, so that's that. You know, do I hate valve amps? No, I just don't like their inconsistency. Do I hate it? Definitely not. It's fun sometimes, but for me, for the way I am and the way my brain works and for the way I feel things, I can't do that. I can't deal with that inconsistency. It drives me balmy. I like to be able to kind of turn things on and it sounds the same way as it did last year. You know what I mean? I like the same sound no matter what. So, and it just takes stress out of things for me, and because I'm a very easy stressed person. So, and that affects me badly. If I get really stressed, it causes all sorts of problems. So I need to avoid that as much as possible. So yeah, so that's it really, people with Tube. Like I say, I mean, I just wanted to kind of like do a video specifically entitled "Do I Hate Valve Amplifiers?" and explain why. No, I don't hate them, but I would not choose to use them over Katana, over the MG, over the CR120, over any of the amps I've got. Like I say, when all is said and done, eventually I'll have one valve amplifier and I'll have no desire to get another one unless it's Jimi Hendrix's or John Frusciante's, in which case I want it just because, but then I'll probably never use it. But, which would be the wrong reason to own it. But anyway, but yeah, so that's that. You know, I just want to do a video just explaining, because a lot of people, have come to me over the years saying they don't understand, and like I say, it just comes down to consistency. And the fact is, I don't hear or feel the difference between the two. To me, there is no difference. A good amp is a good amp, regardless of what's in it. You know, it doesn't need glass tubes in it to make it a good amplifier. To me, it really doesn't. You know, if that's what you want, then cool. It doesn't work for me though. You know what I mean? I don't like it. And I don't like over the years where people have been pressuring me. It's not really pressure because it never works. But, people put themselves out to try and voice their opinion of how they're right and I'm so very wrong. And it's just like, well, no. For you liking valve amplifiers, that's cool. For me liking solid state amps, that's cool. But for you to try and force your opinion on me saying that what I'm doing is wrong because you don't like it, that is wrong. You know what I mean? That's ridiculous. That's like, that's like somebody who really likes Coke, for instance. I mean, I'm talking about the drink, not the other stuff, the rock and roll substance. Coke, and I'm talking about the bottle variety. If somebody likes Coca-Cola, let's say that, it would be wrong for somebody to come up and say, if somebody really likes that, I mean, yeah, it's not exactly great for you, but if somebody really likes that, if somebody comes along and says, you shouldn't drink that, it's really, really bad for you, and then really tries to hammer it home why you shouldn't, it's wrong. You know what I mean? It's not your life to lead, it's not your decision to make. You know what I mean? Funny enough, another thing as well, is I've got into trouble for using single coils over the years as well, over humbuckers. That's got me thrown out of bands as well, using Stratocasters. Must be a band's nightmare, me turning up with solid state amps, single coil pickups, and I don't know. Who knows? People must, I don't know. But all I know is it's landing me in hot water. But again, it's not up to, if you like valve amps, wicked. I like solid state amps. Don't tell me I'm wrong. It's like people who, I'm not going to get heavily into this, but it's like the relicking thing. If you don't like relicking, fine. Not everyone does. If you don't like it, if you like your guitars pristine, cool. That's where you like it. If people like relic guitars, cool. It's not up for either one to say what's right or what's wrong. It's up to what you like and what you prefer. Because we're all individual people at the end of the day. We all like different things. It's not up to anybody to say what we do is right or wrong. As long as we're not hurting anybody, it's fine. Me using solid state amps doesn't hurt anybody. Me using single coil pickups and Stratocasters doesn't hurt anybody. You know what I mean? But for some reason, people get it through their heads that it's an offence. I mean, I'm not talking about everyone here, people with Tube. It's just like, the old rotten apple in the bunch, really. And over the years, like I say, it's landed me in a lot of trouble with people who just really hate me just because I use solid state amps. bit mental, to be honest with you. I just don't understand it. It seems really stupid to me. If you're happy where you are, why do you have to argue with me over what I like? It shouldn't make any difference. I like solid state amps, you like valve amps. That's fine, but don't try and change my perspective on things just because you don't like what I like. You're not supposed to. You know what I mean? We're all individual people. You're not supposed to necessarily like what I like. That's fine. That's human nature. I just don't like it when people really get really shirty and forceful about their opinions over valve amplifiers over solid state. You know what I mean? I just tune out at that point and walk off the other direction, because it's just not. At that point, your opinion isn't valid. Your opinion's valid, but only for a thing. Right? It's not really valid because you're not really voicing an opinion. You're trying to force an opinion. In which case, that's wrong. You know what I mean? You can have an opinion, but you shouldn't. If you have to force it, there's normally something wrong with it. You know what I mean? You have to, and then at that point, I think you have to kind of look about where you are with it instead of kind of like looking at somebody else's preference. I think you'll have to look at your preference. But like I say, I don't feel we'll hear the difference between solid state and valve. Never have, never will. I still stand by that statement. There just isn't a difference to me. There just is not a difference. If I go through the Fender, Pro Junior, I go through that, it sounds like a Fender amp. But if I go through my Deluxe Reverb Tone Master over there, it sounds like a Fender amp. If I go for my Fender Stage, it sounds like a Fender amp. There's no difference between the two for free, to me. They all sound like a Fender. Same thing with kind of like, Katanas or MGs or CL120s or whatever. They all sound, they're all good amps. Regardless of the fact they don't have glass glowing in the back of them, it doesn't make any difference to me. I'm happy where I am. So anyway, I'm going to stop talking now because it's long. This is a lot longer than I expected it to be. But anyway, so I thought I'd just do a video just kind of like, just to set the record straight. No, I don't hate valve amplifiers. I just don't like inconsistency of tone. That is literally it. And and hopefully I've explained, the reason why. Like I say, it all comes down to kind of, like I say, it's just personal preference at the end of the day. But don't ever, if you've got an opinion on something, that's cool. But don't force it on other people. You know what I mean? Don't ever, you shouldn't be forcing your opinion on people if they don't want to hear it. You know what I mean? It's not fair, it isn't cool, and you definitely don't do it. You know what I mean? If somebody asks your opinion, you can say it. But like I say, it's, trying to get people to like what you like forcefully is just totally wrong. You know what I mean? If people start liking what you like through their own free will, that's cool. But if you're like, no, you must like this, you must get this immediately, or I'll eat your feet. You know what I mean? Something wrong at that point. You shouldn't be doing that, Anyway. And I don't like people who do that. It's just bullying, basically, at that point. Anyway, but yeah, people for tube, there you go. So, do I hate valve amplifiers? No. Inconsistency is the problem. Solid state, don't have that problem. They always sound the same. And again, set it, forget it, and go for it. And that's what I like. I don't like anything that gets in the way of me making music or playing the guitar or capturing a moment. You know what I mean? I don't like anything that gets in the way of that. Unfortunately, valve amplifiers do that for me. I'm not saying they do that for everyone, but for me they do. They drive me potty, and I don't like it. It drives me insane. So yeah, solid state for me. Apart from one valve amplifier, which I will eventually just own forever because I love it. But does it sound any better than these? No, sounds the same. Sounds exactly the same as that one. There's no difference. Anyway, to me, it's only from my perspective. Anyway, people with tube, there you go. Hope you enjoyed this vid. I know it's been a lot of waffle, but hopefully kind of I've explained it in a way that makes sense of reason why. And I'm sure I'm not alone in this. I'm sure I'm not alone in the whole kind of like, I like solid state because of the consistency thing. I'm sure there's other people out there who like it as well. And that's cool. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, everybody. I'll see you again for Enki on Wednesday. Have a great morning, afternoon, and good evening. And yes, goodbye now, everyone. Much for watching. Goodbye. Haha.